Hello, Janesville, and welcome back to Park Place Views, the monthly program that aims to keep residents informed by highlighting the people, places, and partners of the City of Janesville. As always, this program is brought to you by the City of Janesville and JATV Media Services. I'm your host, Nick Faust, and I'm the Communications Specialist in the City Manager's Office. Now, in last month's episode, we were joined by Brian McCormick, the Director of the Hedberg Public Library. After a year filled with wall-to-wall fun at Janesville's library, it was great to catch up on all things HPL with Brian. If you're interested in viewing that episode or any past episode of the program, they are all available to watch on demand on the city's website or JATV's YouTube channel. Now today I'm looking forward to being joined by Chief Jim Ponkauskas of the Janesville Fire Department. As we start the new year, it'll be a great time to sit down and hear about all the JFD has planned for 2023 and what our community can do to stay safe and healthy. But first, a bit more about Chief Ponkauskas. Jim began his career in 1988 as a firefighter EMT with the Orfordville Fire Protection District while a senior at Parkview High School. He served for 26 years with the OFD, many of which while also serving at the JFD. In 1999, he was selected as fire chief in Orfordville, a role he served in for 13 years. During his service with the JFD, he's held the position of paramedic, motor pump operator, lieutenant, acting captain, shift commander, deputy fire chief, and in September of 2021, he was named Fire Chief. Jim holds an associate degree in fire science from Blackhawk Technical College and is currently studying for a bachelor's degree in fire and emergency response management from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. Thanks for joining us today, Chief.
Thanks, Nick. Glad to be here.
Wonderful, and I did a bit of a deep dive into your career, but perhaps for those who haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet, anything else you want to maybe tell our viewers about yourself?
Sure, Nick. I was raised in Orfordville, Wisconsin, a little bit west of Janesville. Janesville was always kind of our hub for our activities. Growing up, I got an interest in the fire service from my father. He worked for General Motors, and on his spare time, he served as a volunteer for the Orfordville Fire Department. So at a very young age, I spent a lot of time over at the fire station there in Orfordville, and that's what really drove me to follow the career and the goals that I've had in the fire service.
Yeah, that's really an interesting start to your career, and you really mentioned it. You grew up in a family where fire service was kind of the thing to do, and when you started at Orfordville, I mean, did you know that management was something you wanted to do, or really a career, nearly 35 years in the service was something that was for you?
When I started my career out in Orfordville, I wouldn't necessarily think that I was really driven to be in the admin of the fire department. That was just something I had gained over the years, just from my experience working with the individuals I worked with, and then continuing my education. I think growing up, a lot of young individuals always think, well, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a police officer, and they don't necessarily follow that career path. Knowing that I had an interest in it, I started my education early. I had a perfect opportunity in high school to start out with my firefighter 1, my firefighter 2, my EMT, get that done early, and then start my career on the volunteer side. I found that I really loved doing what we were doing as volunteers on the fire department. The fire chief in Orfordville at the time was Fire Chief Jim Jensen, which served here in Janesville, and he really showed me that the fire service was something that that I really wanted to get into. So I had applied here in Janesville, ended up getting hired. Chief Jensen ended up moving up through the ranks here in Janesville, took the assistant chief's position, and that's really when I felt that what I wanted to do as a long-term goal for my career was to be on the admin side of the fire service. As I look back in my career, 28 years here in the Janesville Fire Department. In those 28 years, I've served in an admin role as a battalion chief, deputy chief, or chief for 11 of those 28 years.
Yeah, wow, so really a full journey to where you are today, and it sounds like some great mentorship along the way.
There has been.
Which is always so important. And on the outset, Chief, just I thought might be helpful to refresh folks who think the JFD, but they don't necessarily think spatially where the JFD is all throughout the city. What's our layout for for the department?
Sure, Nick. We operate out of 5 fire stations here in the city of Janesville. Obviously, we have our central fire station up there on Milton Avenue, the newest one of our facilities that we operate out of. We also have our Station 3 on the west side on Crosby. Our Station 2 is on the south side down on Joliet and Washington. Station 4 is out on the east side on Milwaukee Street, and Station 5 is out on Newport and Kennedy. So we operate out of the 5 stations. Each one of those stations have a set response area. And Station 1 being the central station, they have a smaller response area, but they're backups to all the other fire stations.
All right. So if times call for it, one would kind of fill for all the other folks, back them up.
Correct.
So
if Station 2's ambulance might be out on a call and Station 1's available, Station 2 would take that second call, and Station 1 would take that second call in Station 2's area.
Oh, fascinating. And organizationally then, I'm imagining most things are done administratively out of the central fire station. How is the JFD sort of structured from a managerial perspective, and how many overall staff members do you have?
Sure. The fire department, we have our chief. We have 2 deputy chiefs. One deputy chief is the deputy chief of operations. He kind of oversees all the activities of the fire department. We have a deputy chief of EMS and support services. So Chief Keshnick is in charge of our EMS service here in the city of Janesville, and then she's also responsible for all the maintenance to our vehicles and our facilities. So out of Station 1, we're all up there with 2 admin staff to support us, and then we have a battalion chief that's on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So on our 3 shifts, there's 3 battalion chiefs. The battalion chiefs are also located up at Station number 1. They are responsible for the day-to-day activities of their shift. So as you look at the fire department for the daily activities or our staffing, we have the 5 stations. At each station, there is a lieutenant. There are 2 individuals that will operate on the engine company for the day, and there's 2 individuals that are on the ambulance. So for the day, there's 26 personnel on staff throughout the city. Each shift has 31 personnel. But because of vacation time off or time off, we're allowed 4 individuals off a day, so that leaves us 26 individuals that have to be here to operate the fire department.
Wow, yeah, and that's always kind of something that I find neat to think about, that 24/7, 365, how the JFD really makes that work to give coverage to the whole city. In terms of fire protection. And outside of fire protection, I should also say, the JFD provides ambulance services, as we might be familiar with. 2022 was a special year in that category for the department because the JFD welcomed a 5th paramedic ambulance, which means that the JFD staffs an engine truck company and an ambulance at all 5 fire stations. How has the first year kind of been with that new capacity?
It's been working very well for us. As you said, we worked many years to get that 5th ambulance company here in the city. When you look at the addition of the ambulance, what that really does is it takes a little bit of the load off of the other stations or the other ambulances. We average anywhere from 30 to 35 calls a day out of those 5 stations. So when we were running 4 ambulances, Station 2's ambulance and Station 1's ambulance was really covering the area that new ambulance at Station 3 covered. So by putting that into service, it took a little bit of the call volume away from Station 1, and Station 2 gives them a little bit of a break, because what happens, as I said earlier, with Station 1 is not only do they have all the calls in their own response area, they also cover all the other areas. So they could really be moving throughout the city in a day's time. So with that 5th ambulance, it reduced the call. It didn't reduce the call volume in the city, but what it did is it reduced the number of calls that other ambulances were responding to that Station 3's response area. So kind of even things out a little bit when it comes to the number of calls each one of the ambulances go on a day.
Yeah, really important, and talking about using resources efficiently and effectively, and kind of maintaining that, and that's great to hear. And while folks may think of that and fire suppression kind of when they think of the department, I always also like to highlight, aside from those things, the many other important services you folks provide. So if we could just maybe run down the list, I know it's lengthy.
Sure, yes. We do have a lot of different activities at the fire department. Not only do we do fire suppression and EMS, One of our big divisions in the fire department is our prevention bureau. So not only is that going out and doing public education with our younger citizens here in Janesville, but it's also educating the more senior individuals of the city, along with going and doing all our public safety inspections in the different facilities throughout the city to make sure that all our facilities are safe for our community and our individuals in our community when they're out doing their shopping, going to work, or anything like that. One of the other big things for us is our special services, or our, we run a variety of special operations in the city of Janesville. The Janesville Fire Department is contracted through Rock County to provide a hazardous material response team.
Wow.
So not only do we provide that hazmat response to the city and the residents of the city, we also provide that to Rock County and in the surrounding area. And we are part of a Tier 3 team where if we were to be called out to any place in the state, there's a potential that we would have to respond to that. Wow. So along with our hazardous material response, we also have technical rescue. So when you look at any kind of high-angle rescue, confined space rescue, trench rescue, we also have individuals on the department that are certified for that operation, and we have the equipment to do that also. And then we also operate our dive team. And our dive team is an asset for the city of Janesville, obviously the river running through the city, but through mutual aid agreements and our MABUS system will also respond outside of our response area. One of the teams that was just kind of brought here 3 years ago that is something new to the department, it's really taken off, is our TEMS team. So that's our technical EMS. So that is when we go out to, we actually embed paramedics into the SWAT team at the police department. So those individuals aren't necessarily there for the individuals that PD may be responding for that SWAT operation. Those paramedics are there for the actual individuals on the SWAT team. So if anything would happen to any of the law enforcement officers operating on that scene, that paramedic is there just to take care of those individuals.
Wow. That's certainly something that I don't think most folks maybe know of or think about, but working in concert with our other first responders in the city to really enhance outcomes, and thinking about, just the wide range of technical abilities you folks have and how that serves as not only an asset for the city here, but our surrounding area. And I would also really plug for folks who are interested, is the Fire Prevention Bureau keeps a great amount of information on our city website under the fire department's webpage about protecting yourself and your family. So it's always great to check that out, because that's a really important service that you don't think about sometimes until it's unfortunately too late. So it's good to keep that public knowledge and awareness in the community. Well, and now, Chief, thinking about something that impacts not only the JFD, but the entire fire service, supply chain issues have really come to roost when it comes to equipment for a lot of fire services. Has it become more time-consuming to get new equipment, and how does the JFD make sure that it's stocked with the gear and vehicles it needs to protect our community?
Sure. When we look at our fleet, we have a vehicle replacement schedule. So each one of the vehicles has a certain time frame that we have them in service. So when you look at the service life of a fire engine, it's about 15 years. When you look at the service life of an ambulance, it's about 7 years. Obviously, the ambulances, 83% of our calls are EMS calls, so our ambulances are on the road a lot. So we actually have each individual on a schedule, so we know when the upcoming replacements are. What we found here lately with the supply chain is it's getting to take longer and longer for those pieces of equipment. When we go to spec them out, we go to order them to get them into our fleet and replace the vehicles in our fleet now. So we actually had two ambulances in our vehicle replacement schedule for 2022. We had ordered those ambulances last February. We have not received either one of those yet.
Wow.
We did receive one of the chassis, so the pickup of one of them, and we actually just sent that out 2 weeks ago to start the build of one of the new ambulances. And on our second ambulance, we don't even have information on when we're going to receive that other fleet. So when 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you could plan on speccing out an ambulance and it would be built in 120 to 180 days. Right now, we're looking at anywhere from 312 to 350 for the build of an ambulance. And then when we look at an engine, engines, so a fire engine, we were looking at, they're right around a 200-day build time. We actually went to council a few months ago and asked them if we were able to order a engine early and get that into the CIP for the following year, because that 200-day build time is now turned into like a 512 to a 560-day build time for a fire engine now. So what that does to the fire department is we have planned to get those vehicles out of our fleet at a certain time because of the wear and tear on the vehicle and what it costs us to maintain that vehicle, because obviously we know the older the vehicle gets, the more repairs we have to have on it. So now we're finding that we're keeping them vehicles in our fleet a little bit longer because the new ones to replace them haven't come in yet, so it's costing us a little extra money to keep that vehicle going, to keep it in service until the new one gets here. So the supply chain has had an effect on the fire department.
Yeah, I mean, kind of for folks at home, that's something akin to thinking maybe 2 years out for ordering maybe a new car for the house or something. That's just, that takes an incredible amount of forethought and planning, as you mentioned, and glad to hear it's being worked still, and hopefully that gets better for you folks in the future.
We hope so also.
And on a solemn note as well, last month our community tragically lost 2 members of the public to a residential fire. Why, Jim, are these types of fires so dangerous, and what can our viewers at home do to protect themselves and their families?
Sure. I think when you look at the incident and any of the incidents that involve any type of fatality like that, just the material that individuals have in their homes anymore is just a little different. Fires start and they take off a little bit quicker than what they have in the past. So just keeping in mind, we go out every year and talk to the kids in our schools and talk about fire safety and talk about exit plans and if a fire starts in the house, get out of the residence, don't go back into the residence. Right. So when we talk fire safety, those are the key things that we push. The use of candles, the use of space heaters, the use of smoking materials and stuff like that. Yeah. So just keep all that in mind. Obviously, winter, as cold as it's been right now, there's things that individuals do to help keep their heating bills and stuff down. But just if that's what needs to be done, just do it in a safe manner.
Yeah. I as someone who myself could perhaps space heat my office every once in a while, it's important to really check back in with the real dangers that those items can cause, because sometimes I think we use things every day and we forget just, what one little accident could turn into.
Correct.
And so staying mindful of that, and like you mentioned, exit plans, something as simple as maybe taking the household and reviewing where to go, don't go back in, as
Correct.
You said, that can really, really save lives. And outside of maybe residential fires and that in particular, on a broader base of trends, Chief, are you seeing any new threats when it comes to fire danger? I know you talked about new material.
Yeah. Here in the city, we haven't seen a whole lot, but yes, just what we're seeing in fires now, the different furnishings inside, there has been an increase in the area of residential fires, but until you really start looking and finding out what the cause of those are, it's hard to tell. As I've seen on the news here lately, there's been some recalls on some different items and stuff like that. So just keep in mind that when you see things come through like that there's a recall on an appliance that you may have in your home, just check it out and make sure that it's not one of them that's on their list. And we'll go through and we'll check those recalls, and we'll get something posted on our Facebook page, or we'll get something posted on our webpage, just so individuals know, they're seeing it on the news, but we like to get that message out just so it gets it in people's minds to make sure that everything that they have in their home is safe. Yeah, and an app reminder to check the JFD's website, or if you're on Facebook, I know those consumer notices
promptly get
Yes.
shared to your page. So definitely do that. And thinking about hazards, it's the winter months, as you mentioned, Chief, and this time of the year is particularly dangerous when we talk about carbon monoxide and the dangers of CO poisoning. And how can the community protect themselves from that?
The biggest thing is CO monitors, CO
Okay.
detectors. We all sit and talk about smoke detectors required in the homes.
Yeah.
Certain residents do require CO detectors, but it's always a good idea to make sure that you have a CO detector in your home. We respond to probably 4 or 5 CO alarms a month, sometimes more. Not all of them we find anything. We'll always call Allianton to kind of double check for us. The big thing is if you have any indication that you might have an issue with CO, don't hesitate on calling.
Yeah.
We'll come and check it out. We'll come and check the individuals out to make sure that everybody's doing okay. You know, the biggest thing with CO, they call it the silent killer.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't always get symptoms from it, but some of the symptoms that you could get from it are headaches, dizziness,
Yeah.
feeling nauseous, just feeling tired. So there's a lot of viruses going around, a lot of bugs going
Right.
around, so it's really hard. But you know, I would push for the use of CO detectors. I would push for keeping track of them, making sure they're tested monthly, just like you test your smoke detector. And if there's any indication that you may have an issue, you're not quite feeling well, don't hesitate on calling, and we can come check things out.
Yeah, make sure to stay up on those detectors and really err on the side of caution. I'm glad you mentioned that because we think about how it can be the silent killer and how some of those symptoms can really mimic kind of everyday maladies that you might feel. And so it's so important to get those detectors and err on the side of caution there, Chief. And shifting gears, our viewers may also have recently read about staffing issues in the fire service, particularly affecting rural areas in our state. And in fact, Chief, they may have even read a copy from you in the Gazette here, giving your perspective. Of course, you know, rural staffing shortages do really impact our neighbors in rural communities. But how do those staffing issues directly impact then the JFD's ability to provide services?
Sure. With us, it's kind of a twofold. As you look at the fire service nationwide, there is a shortage for volunteers or paid-on-call individuals. What departments are finding is they're having to look at different staffing models. So there's departments out there that have gotten by for years as a volunteer or a paid-on-call service. Now they're finding that they have to start hiring full-time staff.
Yeah.
So when you look at hiring full-time staff, that's just more opportunities for somebody to get into the fire service. So really the career departments feed off of the volunteer department. So individual finds that they may be interested in being a firefighter, they'll get involved in a volunteer department or paid-on-call department to get the education, the experience they need. They work there for a while. They find, similar to what I did, that it is a career that they really want to get into. And then they come and look for a career at a full-time or a career department. So we kind of draw off of that. Well, if there isn't paid-on-call in volunteer departments, that's less individuals that we have to draw off of. And what happens is, on the other side of that, it makes us a little bit busier. So when you look at a department that is having staffing issues, through our mutual aid, our automatic aid, our mutual aid agreements, or our MABUS agreements, we're finding ourselves having to go out more often and assist area departments because they may not be able to get the individuals they need to staff at the level they need to staff at.
Yeah. So operationally, certainly keeping you a little more busy. And then as we think about the future and how that model maybe, you know, the next step would have been looking to a career department like the JFD, what does that do into the future? And I think that makes it imperative, Chief, then more directly thinking about how the JFD focuses on retaining and developing staff. How do you folks do that in your department?
For us, it's a little different on how we operate. Obviously, recruitment is very important to us. We're finding ourselves that our numbers have kind of went down over the years. When I hate to bring up how long ago it was, but back in '94 when I applied for the Janesville Fire Department, I sat down in a room with over 700 individuals to write the test. Out here the past few years, 2-3 years ago, we were looking at 100 to 110 individuals. That's kind of dwindled down into the 80s, and now this last recruitment process that we had, I want to say that we had 58 to 62 applications that come in. So those numbers have really fallen off. So when we look at that, we try to find different ways to do recruitment. So obviously, social media is very big right now. So to get into those social media campaigns and get our name and stuff out there in our recruitment. One of the benefits for the Janesville Fire Department that you had mentioned earlier is the opportunity to do something different. So come to the Janesville Fire Department. You know, we do suppression, we put fires out, we do EMS, but we also have all these other things with hazmat and technical rescue and dive and TEMS. So that draws individuals too, because that's something different, and individuals always want to be doing something different throughout the day. And our call volume really draws individuals in because they want to be, you want to be busy.
You want to be busy.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that opportunity you highlight to do something new or to explore maybe particular areas that a larger department like the JFD can train people on keeps it as an attractive department to work for.
And there's the career opportunities.
Right.
You know, a smaller department, you could come to work there, you may make a little more money, but there isn't that advancement. Through the Janesville Fire Department, you always have that opportunity to advance throughout your career. You know, you get hired as a firefighter, paramedic, you work on a department for a while, you may become a motor pump operator and driver of the fire apparatus and work your way into an officer role, and then potentially work your way into an admin role. So there's always that opportunity for advancement to move up with all those different benefits in between there.
Yeah, and anybody that is familiar with the JFD knows that you folks do that development and advancement very well. And thinking about training and training staff, folks who follow the JFD on Facebook may have recently seen these pictures of a joint training exercise that you folks held with local law enforcement. I know you talked about the TEMS team. Thinking about the JPD particularly, how important is collaboration between our city's first responders, and how do you maintain that strong partnership?
We always like to, there's always that running joke between the police department and the fire department on, which one's better, how we get to where we are. But the TEMS team is really the team that brought that together for the fire department to embed members of the fire department into the operations of the police department. You want to train together because you don't want the first meeting of an individual to be out on the middle of an emergency scene or an emergency operation. So it's very important that we work together. Obviously, a lot of our EMS responses involves members of law enforcement or the police department. So that communications and being able to work together, knowing what each department does and what they do. And the unfortunate event that we had here a couple weeks ago that you had mentioned, one of the big things with that was the operations that we have to go into when we hear reports of a potential victim in a building. When we pull up on scene, you have to kind of switch gears. So we solely focus on getting into there and trying to make a rescue or try to find an individual that may be in that residence. And what we had found and information that had come back to me was one of the members of the Janesville Police Department that had rolled up on scene with the fire department is our officer and our tailboard went into a rescue mode to go into the residence, and one of the motor pump operator got everything going and got water to the end of the nozzle, and one of the Janesville or Police Department members actually backed that individual up on the back of the hose line and hit the fire from the outside just to kind of slow it down a little bit. So that's what we talk about when the two departments work together. That's the things that we can do. So it is very important to keep that relationship between the fire department and the police department as close as we can. We train together. We get to know each individual on the department, so that way when something like that happens or we're working together on the scene of an accident or working together on the scene of an EMS response, we kind of know what each other's thoughts are, what we're there to do.
Yeah, thinking about that and, really both hands, so to speak, of the city's protective services working together, and great to hear, imperative that you folks are continuing to work on that collaboration. It's also Chief 2023, which means among many exciting things, new budget year. What are the JFD's budgetary priorities for the year ahead?
Well, the fire department is kind of, I wouldn't say that it's unique, but our budget is kind of set throughout the year.
Right.
Obviously, we operated a little over $12 million budget. 90% of that is personnel. So it's important for us to stay within budget and to be able to provide the services that we need to our community. CIP, that's probably the biggest thing for us when we talk about budgeting is what do we have on our plans for the year? What vehicles are we going to replace? What repairs are needed, or what repairs are we going to need to make to facilities? When we look at 2023 right now, in the strategic plan for the city is to do a study on either the remodel or the replacement of Fire Station number 3 on Crosby Street. That fire station was put into service, I believe, it was actually, I think, February 15th of 1971 or 1972. So that facility's been in operations for a while, and the way the fire department operates now compared to what it did back in 1972 when it was built, there's some upgrades that need to be done there. So our study needs to really focus on, is that station in the right location for our response to that response area, and what upgrades will need to be done there. Is it more feasible to find a different location for that station and rebuild a new station? Is it more feasible to leave the station where it's at and do a remodel of the station? Right now, we truly believe that Fire Station number 3 is in the correct location. From how the community grew around that from 1972, it still really sits in the right spot. It's just, do we have enough room there, and what will it cost to remodel that versus rebuilding it? So that's our big project for 2023.
Wow, yeah, certainly quite an undertaking, but judiciously approached through a study, and it kind of highlights, I think, not really in all departments of the city, but especially in public safety, you kind of are in this world of our, program costs and operational budget, and then kind of those long-term capital needs that we hit on and touched on in the program. And in the coming year then, Chief, what are your goals for the department?
I think for me and my admin staff, I think our biggest goal is we are going to see a turnover here in the next year and a half to 2 years with retirements and staff. So obviously succession planning is really big for the fire department. As individuals move throughout their career, as admin staff, as fire officers retire out, you want to make sure that the individuals that are moving up through those ranks are ready to fulfill those positions. So succession planning is really big for me. It's really big for the department. So one of the goals is to make sure that all our individuals are prepared and ready to take that next step. Training is another big goal for us. We need to make sure our individuals are trained. We train all our fire officers at a blue card, so it's a command level to be able to operate on the fire ground. So we have a number of individuals going through the blue card for 2023. So that is a goal to get the rest of our officers and acting officers through that training. So very important to stay up on our training, stay up on our skills to provide the service that the community expects from the Janesville Fire Department.
Yeah, a busy year. Well, and before we wrap up, you kind of mentioned with succession planning and thinking about the future. And no means a career retrospective for you just yet, Chief, but if you were to maybe give advice to a younger person or anyone looking at the fire service as a career, what encouragement, what advice would you give to them?
Sure. When an individual is really set that this is the career that they want to get into, the education, the training, and the experience is very important. So not very often an individual just decides they want to become a firefighter or a paramedic and jumps right onto a career full-time department.
Right.
So find yourself a good, strong volunteer or paid-on-call department. Those departments will assist you with your schooling, your firefighter 1, your firefighter 2, your EMT. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of the experience that you'll get from going on the calls from these departments. Not only the Janesville Fire Department, but a lot of other career departments, they really rely on an individual coming into the service with their paramedic license. So as you work through your career, start out on the fire side, the EMT side. If you can afford to go to paramedic school, get your paramedic license, get that paramedic experience, and that'll really benefit you when you try to get a career on a full-time department, whether it's with the Janesville Fire Department or any other department throughout the state or the nation.
Yeah, some steps to take.
And you really need to understand too, a career in the fire service, you're continually going to school. It's a never-ending. You start out, say it's 20 years old. I'm taking the same additional training or the refresher classes now to keep up on my my license and my skills that I did, 30 years ago. So you really have to like school. You really have to like that continuing ed part, because you do that all the way through your career.
Yeah, it's a career with really the opportunity where you never stop learning.
You don't.
And that can be rewarding, I think, as well for folks. And that about does it for us today,
well, thank
Chief.
you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I always value the opportunity to talk about the great work you folks do at the JFD. You and your team provide Janesville with top-tier service, protection, and emergency response. Fortunately, that's not something our average resident has to experience every day. But when they do need your help, the JFD is there. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you, our viewers and residents, for tuning in today and for all you do to help make Janesville a community of choice to realize life's opportunities. I invite you to stay connected by following the city on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, signing up for emergency notifications from the JPD via the Nixle app, and signing up to receive our weekly city press releases by visiting www.janesvillewi.gov/email list. I also want to encourage you to tune into the program next month when I sit down with Transit Director Becca Smith of JTS. As we get excited to open up our newly remodeled downtown transfer center, I'm excited to hop aboard the proverbial bus and get up to speed with JTS. For Park Place Views in the city of Janesville, I'm Nick Faust. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next month.